Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here. And today I'm bringing you guys my updated top 5 worst premium ships list. So needless to say, these are ships that I would strongly recommend you guys avoid picking up or getting because you will have an absolute miserable time in them most likely. At the end of the day though, this is all my opinion, and if you guys enjoy these ships, then good on you. I'm glad you enjoy them. I still wouldn't recommend them to any players out there, especially newer players looking to pick up a premium ship. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get on into the list. Coming in at number 5, we have the Tier 7 Premium Italian Destroyer, the FR-25. This is, I think, the most recent ship on this list, most recently released ship on this list, that is. So the FR-25 is a French destroyer given to the Italians, but it's also just terrible in every single way. It's like they tried to mix the French and Italian destroyers, which on paper the idea sounds good because both tech lines are fantastic DDs, but they just forgot to include the best bits from both of those lines in this one ship. So the FR-25 has 139mm guns, which are some fairly large guns, especially when you look at the Italian destroyers, and they have relatively small guns all the way up until the Tier 10. So, again, on paper, large gunned with large sap shells should be a combination for quite a fun destroyer. But it actually has worse damage per shell than its techline Tier 7 or even its Tier 6 counterpart. These 139mm shells do less damage than shells that are 20mm smaller than it on the Tier 7 or the Tier 6 DD. And on top of that, too, it has worse DPM than those DDs, too, because, of course, it has bigger guns. So that's out the window. Then these shells are insanely floaty. Now, the FR-25 does have longer range than the Italian DDs do, which, again, on paper looks good, but then you have these floaty shells. So unless you're shooting at a battleship that's moving very slowly, or that's stuck on an island, or some ship that's beached, you're going to really struggle to hit with these shells at range, so you can't really make use of its range. If you try to play it in closer, like most other Italian destroyers are played, it's also not that great there because you literally get out DPM'd by a ship that's a tier lower than you. And from the French side of things, it does get the French speed boost, and it does get the Italian DD exhaust smoke, but you can't really yellow with it because the torpedoes aren't that fantastic. Now, when I was reviewing this ship and playing this ship on stream, a couple of viewers said, hey, play like Paulo Emilio. You got the speed boost and you got the exhaust smoke. And yeah, again, on paper, it looks like it might be able to do that, but you don't have the nuclear torpedoes that the Paulo Emilio has, or their same tier equivalent. Yes, you can charge, Tier 6 and Tier 5 battleships that have lost a good chunk of their health, and you can, of course, delete them, but you can't charge several ships at once and throw one rack at them and nuke them out the water like you can with the Paulo Emilio. Oh, and also, too, it doesn't get the French damage saturation or the reload booster. Again, leaving out two of the best aspects of the French destroyer line. That damage saturation where you effectively take 50% less damage is missing here. And again, no reload booster either. So the ship's just incredibly lackluster and one I would highly recommend you guys avoid. I've heard some players say that they've had some luck with it in ranked. And sure, if you're in a situation when you're always top tier, of course any ship is going to perform well. But still, I would not recommend the FR-25 at all. Alright, moving on down to number 4, we have the Canarias, which is the Tier 6 Spanish cruiser, the first ever ship of the Spanish nation in-game, and unfortunately, it's a letdown. Now, don't get me wrong, I wanted this cruiser to be very good, or at least halfway decent in some ways, and unfortunately, she is not. So the Canarias is a Tier 6 cruiser with no HE. Now, she does get improved AP, which does most certainly help out. She has 203mm guns, which are large guns for Tier 6. She has a 12-second reload time. She doesn't have the torpedoes that she should have, unfortunately. And what this ship boils down to is that, again, when you're top tier, the ship does pretty well. But when you get double up tiered, this is absolutely one of the worst ships to be in, because you don't have HE. And the improved AP does okay at tier 6, but when you now have to fight tier 8 battleships and tier 8 cruisers and you don't have any HE, and the 12-second reload time, again, while workable at tier 6, just becomes an absolute massive hindrance to your performance when you get double up tiered. Unlike some other only AP cruisers like the British cruiser line that has either a multitude of guns to make up for it or a faster reload time to make up for it, the Canarias doesn't have that here. Now, it is worth noting that the Canarias went through development hell. It was supposed to have the special burst fire mode the super ships had that would probably help it perform better in this way, but of course the version that we got didn't get that, and they didn't give her HE to make up for it. They didn't give her torpedoes to make up for it. They didn't give her a faster base reload time to make up for it, or anything like that. So you're stuck with a cruiser that, again, like the FR-25, can do okay at its tier, but when you get double up tiered, which is the reality of playing a tier 6 premium ship or tier 6 ship in general, you really struggle to hang in there. And the Canarias isn't available anymore at the moment. She was available for a limited time during the event when her and Dido were out, but it wouldn't surprise me if they do release the ship into the premium shop sometime in the future. But if they ever do, guys, pass on this one. It's just going to be a bunch of annoyance and frustration. Alright, moving on down to number 3, we have the Yudachi, the Japanese premium destroyer. And it's really funny seeing players from World of Warships Legends and I think Blitz, where the Yudachi is considered to be one of the most OP ships in the game. And then you have our Yudachi, which is absolutely just terrible. So what the Yudachi has that makes it a terrible premium is that its torpedoes are incredibly slow at 57 knots base, and they have a 1.9 kilometer detect. So these are torpedoes that travel incredibly slowly, which would be okay if they were stealthy, but they're not. You can see them from almost 2 kilometers, which means that most ships will have like 15 seconds to dodge your torpedoes, if not more, depending upon, of course, hydro and such. So you're going to be missing many a torpedo in this boat, and then you have terrible guns on top of that too, so to where you can't, kind of fall back on your guns and start some fires and do a little bit of farming. No, the guns on this ship are absolutely terrible. She does get the torpedo reload booster, so you can't have a fresh rack of torps in a few seconds, but that doesn't change the fact that your torpedoes are seen from the moon. So she's a terribly frustrating ship, and I'm not the world's best torpedo boat player. Again, I'm not even that good of a destroyer player besides in gunboats. And even when playing other, again, quote-unquote torpedo boats, and then playing this thing is absolutely terrible. And again, this is a ship that can get double up tiered. So imagine having to fight ships 2 tiers higher with this ships that are faster, more maneuverable, that can easily dodge your torpedoes. It's, again, just an absolute frustrating ship to play, and again, a historical ship that I wish had been better, but unfortunately is not. Alright, moving on to number 2, we have the Tier 8 premium German aircraft carrier, the Graf Zeppelin. So the Graf Zeppelin is actually one of my personal favorite ships in the game, which again goes to show you that just because a ship is considered to be terrible, it's not necessarily one that you can't enjoy. I do have enjoyable moments in Graf Zeppelin, but it's most certainly not a carrier I would recommend to you guys, unless you just like stupid meme things, which this ship is. So the Graf Zeppelin has been absolutely, it's got to be one of the most nerfed ships in the game. This ship came out, and I'm not even talking about the original Graf Zeppelin, like the RTS Graf Zeppelin. I'm just talking about like Graf Zeppelin since the carrier rework has to be one of the most nerfed ships in the game. She's been hit with so many changes, so many global CV changes that just absolutely cut her legs out from underneath her. Like the HP of her planes, they're incredibly low, and her thing was when they re-released her after the carrier rework, she had incredibly fast planes, but they were incredibly fragile. So you could zoom in, get your ordnance off, and then zoom out. before the flak and continuous damage had time to really eat into your planes. But then they nerfed the speed of all planes, and they didn't compensate her in any way, shape, or form. Another example was when they suddenly out of nowhere changed the manner in which her dive bombers dive. Before, these dive bombers would literally like almost take a 90-degree turn and dive straight down into the target, which is great because she has two very large AP bombs. And since you could drop those basically almost straight on into the enemy ship, you could do decently in them. But then they changed it to where they dived more at an angle to now where the bombs either completely miss or sometimes even bounce off of the ship's armor, and that's incredibly frustrating. And then they changed the dive bomber reticle. Well, not really the reticle. They changed the manner in which the bombs fall to where they fall to the outside of the reticle more so than the inside. Now, they did recently change that to where they have a bit better of a chance of falling in the inside, so she got a little bit of a buff there, but still, the ship is definitely not great. It's, again, considered widely by many to be the worst tier 8 aircraft carrier by far. So, again, a ship I would not recommend you guys pick up at all, but she does have some meme potential in her. She has quite a few secondary guns and quite a few accurate secondary guns too. The ship was of course meant to be a commerce raider by the Kriegsmarine, and yeah, if you do get in a situation when you have to use your secondaries and you have a secondary build on it, which I do because it's pretty memey, this ship will absolutely rip into whatever cruiser, destroyer, even battleship gets within its secondary range, and it's always good fun when that happens. But that doesn't make up for the fact that her planes are pretty bad. Her torpedo bombers right now are currently her best set of planes to use, and they have been for quite some time. Those haven't been nerfed yet, and hopefully they won't, because again, we seem to have gotten out of the crazy CV changes for the time being. But yeah, a ship that's, again, another cool historical ship that could have been an excellent ship, and that was an excellent ship in her old version, in her old RTS version, but then they, of course, did a switcheroo on us there right before she was released, and then we got this one. Alright, coming in at number 1, we have the British light cruiser, the Tiger 59. This ship is terrible. This ship is just, I don't know how they took a look at this ship and said, alright, yeah, release that. It's just such a bad ship. So what the Tiger 59 is, it's a light cruiser with Minotaur guns, which you might think, oh, Minotaur guns, that sounds a pretty good setup. Well, it only gets 4 of them. You get 4 Minotaur guns. That's it. AP only. Which, again, could work if they gave her, like, a very, very, very high DPM. But they didn't. She has, honestly, not even that great of a reload time on a normal cruiser, but she only has 4 guns with only AP. Now, of course, the Minotaur gets by this by, of course, having, first off, way more guns than 4, and a very, very, very quick reload time on those guns. Tiger 59 doesn't get that, and it's expected to perform at Tier 8. Where it could be a double up to tier 10, where you can see the actual Minotaur. Yeah, so this ship is just so incredibly painful to play. I remember when I streamed her on the night of her release, I had several challenges to get over 100,000 damage in her, which normally by tier 8 and above cruiser standards is no big deal. You know, you normally either have HE or a high fire rate or some manner of weapon and armament that will allow you to do 100,000 damage fairly easily. This thing is terrible. It's so bad. It's, again, 4 guns with a poor reload time. No way to increase that. You know, you don't have a reload booster, which I could see giving the ship a reload booster. That would make it work, or even just giving it HE. If you had HE, it could probably be a lot better. I don't know why they did. I guess they really wanted to stick with the British light cruiser thing where they only have AP shells. Now, again, they are the improved AP shells, so you do have that going for you, but you just can't get enough of them out on target to really be useful. Even destroyers don't really care about this ship because, sure, you have radar and such, but by the time you pop your radar, you can't pump enough shells into them to really do much unless they sail in a perfectly straight line, which of course no competent destroyer player is going to do after getting radar. Of course, they're going to run and try to break your radar, but of course, who knows? Again, at higher tier, it's anything's possible, ain't it? But yes, terrible ship, very few guns, nowhere near the reload that it needs to have. AP only, terrible armor. It does get, of course, an improved heal when it does get slapped for 2/3 of its armor out of nowhere. But again, an absolute miserable ship to play that you're going to have to really work to try and do well in the ship. That just don't get it, don't get it. There's so many better premiums out there you can buy instead of the Tiger 59. Alright guys, so that is my top 5 worst ships list. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comments down below. Are there any premiums that you expected to be on this list but weren't? Again, let me know about those in the comments down below. Hope you guys are having a wonderful Monday and have a wonderful week. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel. We're on our way to 35,000 subs. We're very close to that goal, and I am planning on doing a giveaway once we get there, so make sure you stick around for that. Hope you guys are having a wonderful week. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.